DIY.
Drake's home studio lists for $250K an hour. Drake feature not included. It appears he's now offering up his studio for other musicians to use for $250,000 an hour. An hour! Allegedly, Drake's home studio in his Toronto abode. Yeah, you charging $250,000, you better call this something different. It ain't a house no more. That shit is a abode. Went up on Stu Finder. The hell is Stu Finder? Oh, it's an app dedicated to finding and booking recording studios. I've never heard of that until this. Which kind of makes me feel like, I don't know, Image Line has got me paranoid.
Welcome.
FL Studio got me paranoid ever since that arcade. Is this a new form of marketing? Is there like a marketing team that's like, yo, let's mark this shit up all the way up? These brokies are never gonna afford it, but they're gonna talk about it. Oh, well, mission accomplished. According to the listing titled Drake's Home Studio, interested parties can book the space for $250,000 an hour with access to custom equipment. This is giving me FL Studio arcade vibes again. But here's the thing. Drizzy, nor an engineer, comes with the booking. So what the hell do you want me to do with that hour, Drake? I gotta bring in an engineer? Do I get access to your microphone? $250,000 an hour for the experience. I still haven't seen anything that shows me why this is worth what it is. The listing states Drake feature is not included. Perhaps if you're lucky, you may get a bang for your buck with a brief pop-in from Drizzy. Who knows? For $250,000, Drake better play Xbox in the corner. For $250,000, I need Drake to bring freshly baked cookies. With all due respect, he ain't gotta make them, just like I'm your guest. I paid $250,000 for an hour here. They got like some OVO cookies or something they serve there? Even Stu Finder, the app itself, seemed to raise an eyebrow at the listing, sharing in a press statement that it reached out to Drake's camp for verification. We reached out to Drake and his team to get confirmation that he did, in fact, list his home recording on an app. John Greer, head of Stu Finder PR, stated, "This is where the music business feels like wrestling. My conspiracy antenna goes crazy when I see things like this. What would it take for an app like Stu Finder to say, hey, instead of a traditional booking Drake, we've got this crazy idea. You list your home studio for an outrageous price, and then we'll validate whoever comes through, but I mean, it's gonna get the people talking. You give us some free promo, we slide you some cash, or whatever they, some free hookah, whatever Drake's into, and they go about their business." Does that sound ridiculous to you? Now, I read somewhere else that said that they did confirm that it was actually his folks who set that booking up. The rapper Riff Raff, tiptoeing in my Jordans, who wasted no time in booking a session for $500K, 2 hours. He will apparently be refunded if Stu Finder can't confirm the listing. Until then, his payment is currently on hold. Tax write-off, tax write-off, tax write-off, tax write-off. They're not going to say it, but all of this stuff is tax write-offs. Can we take a second to jump into Drake's virtual studio? This is from a website called DrakeRelated.com that is obviously from the Drake camp. The purpose of this is to give you a virtual tour of his studio, but more so to sell you shit. Like, I don't know if you can see when I hover over this, it says October's very own hat. And if I click on that, then I can go buy me a hat. It looks like a very nice studio. I don't know hardware like that, so I'm gonna leave that alone. He's got fragrances for selling here. Look. You gotta do more than give me vibes for $250. And I know I'm not the demographic. First of all, how much money do you think you would need in order for this to be something that you would go for? Sebastian Francis says $10 million at least. I'm with you on that. Here's where my brain goes along with this. I've only paid for studio time probably 3 times in my entire 20-year career. I have been blessed. And it's not because when I walked in the studios, people was like, oh my God, Kurt is here. Let's give him free studio time. No. Because I knew I couldn't afford it from the very beginning. Even in a time where going to a studio was like, that's how you show you're serious about your craft. Even at a time where that was a thing, the idea of it, and probably as a young DIYer, didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. If we're talking about the necessity of using certain equipment that is way too large for a home studio, absolutely get it. If we're talking about access to engineers that need to be next to their greatest set of tools, I absolutely understand it. But if we talk about, for me, just getting these 16 bars off at a time, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. And I think the studios that I actually did book when I was living in LA, I think the most I ever paid might have been $150 an hour. And I remember sitting in there prepared, had all my songs ready. I had all the beats ready. I had everything on a thumb drive. And you know what I noticed? Just because you pay people more money you don't pay for their professionalism. Their price is their price, regardless if they're going to have professionalism. Now, if I were to be late, they had all kind of late fees on this contract, extra fees for leaving trash around, which is, if you got any kind of home training, you're not going to do that anyways. But I remember going to these studios and feeling like, damn, this is a massive waste of money. And then I remember being with the engineer and recognizing like, yo, you're really not into this. Like, this is really a job for you. And something about the environment in general felt like a job for me. And it was something that early on I was like, I got to figure this shit out. Because one, I don't have the budget to sustain doing multiple sessions here, because that doesn't cover mixing, mastering, and all that other stuff, right? That just covers your recording session. But I remember being in these studios and I'm like, if I had the ability to do this myself, it would go by so much quicker. It's not going to sound as great, nowhere near as great, but would it sound good enough to continue to produce a pretty quality product? And I led with that. So here's where my brain goes when I see things like this. When I see things that are priced at a certain place, how do you justify the pricing on this? And you know what came to mind? My weird ass brain started connecting dots. I started thinking about Alex Hormozi.
If you can find a way to make someone $1 million, you can charge 250 grand.
If you can find a way to make somebody $1 million, this person being Drake Studio, then you can charge somebody $250,000. Ironically, studio time per hour is $250,000. You follow where I'm going with this?
If I create $50 million in net worth for an entrepreneur, is it unreasonable for me to ask for 10? Most people would say no, right? And it's like, well, how do you sell stuff for $10 million? It's like, well, you make someone 50. That's how you sell stuff for 10 million.
So if we go by that math, if I can make you $50 million through my services, through my consulting, through whatever it is that I offer, that's a really reasonable deal for me to say I'm charging you $10 million for these services. If we're talking about this Drake situation though, 250 times 5. I need for this session to make me $1.2 million. This singular hour to be worth $1.2 million. For this to be valuable to me if I have the funds to pay for that. And I feel like a lot of artists that I've encountered don't necessarily chop up those numbers because they're thinking about all of the things that could happen that probably won't happen. What if while I'm sitting there, 40 overhears me while he's using the bathroom and decides to come in and engineer the studio? You're living in fantasy. What if I happen to pass Drake? He's coming home. You ever think about that? He's coming home. Yeah, Drake, man, but you gotta really come hear this. That's really dope, man. Keep doing your thing. Hey, I've got some business to handle. We've got a 5-on-5 tournament in the OVO basketball court. Have a good day. And then you paid that, dumbass, took a picture. Now you over here taking a picture for Instagram for 452 likes. And then what? Even people who have the money, I really question the decision making. I know that we're living in an attention economy, but is the look worth that much? I say hell no. DIY. DIYers, if you enjoyed this content, make sure that you hit the like button and maybe even consider subscribing. Come on, man. Stop being greedy. Peace.